Welcome to the Writing with Purpose podcast, where I, Anna Woolliscroft, chat with fellow writers and outdoor enthusiasts about how we can embrace creativity and curiosity to live a life full of adventure that doesn't feel like hard work. I delve into exploratory conversations about my two loves in life, writing and nature connection, as part of my mission to share the well-being benefits they both bring. It's wonderful to have you here today. On this special nutrition-focused episode of the Writing with Purpose podcast, I speak with E-J Lacon, certified personal trainer and coach, and we chat about healthy eating for mums-to-be, new mums, and perimenopausal and menopausal women. Hi EJ, welcome to the Writing with Purpose podcast, and it's wonderful to have a chat with you because we co-host with Cassie Footman on the Soulful Reawakening podcast as well, don't we, where we talk about mind, body and soul. So it's super to kind of have you all to myself.
Thank you for asking me. I'm really excited.
You're very welcome. So just for the listeners, EJ, you are a certified personal trainer and a coach, and you live near Cambridge here in the UK, and you work a lot with female clients and specialise with mums-to-be, new mums, and also females who are going through perimenopause and the menopausal time of life. And also, just to let the listeners know, if you hear a few gurgles or anything like that in the background, we have lovely little Ada with EJ, who is accompanying us on the podcast, and she's had a lunch, but she might want some more.
Yeah, she's a bit grouchy.
Oh, bless.
So yeah, anyone with a 7-month-old will understand that.
I'm sure all those who can think back to the time when that was everything to them. So yeah, today we're going to talk about how food changes through preparation, cooking processes, but relate that but also foods in general and how things change, and what new mums to be, and women who are going through the perimenopause and menopause, and the kinds of things that they can think about and perhaps, adapt diets and the foods that they eat. So can we just kick off, EJ, if it's okay with you, just to sort of explain a typical day that you go through now, and perhaps a little bit on why you've chosen what you do as your career path?
Yeah, of course. So a typical day for me can start anywhere between 5 and 6 in the morning, because I have got young children. So again, anyone listening will totally understand that. Once I've dropped my 6-year-old off at school, my day with clients begins. So Ada, my 7-month-old, comes along to work with me, and we go out to clients' houses, or clients come to me, and we deliver personal training sessions, which is all around, I focus a lot on resistance training as opposed to kind of endless cardio, because I know how important resistance training is in all aspects of life, but we'll come on to that a little bit later. So it's really around kind of educating mums to be, and my perimenopausal ladies, around how they can use their bodies effectively, what nutrition they can be using. So we'll have between 4 and 6 sessions a day, I would say. And then as soon as I'm finished with clients, it's back to the school run and playing mum again. So yeah, a very busy lifestyle. But I really enjoy my job, and I love working with women. I think we're such a powerful gender, and it just really, it sits well with me that I'm able to help mums, having been through it all myself.
Yeah, you're non-stop.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and busy life.
Yeah, and it's it's a credit to you that you managed to fit all of that in, and also looking after yourself as well as looking after the little ones and the family and your clients too. But I think it's it's lovely to see Ada coming along with you, and I think it must be nice for clients as well, particularly if they fall into the new mums or the mums to be category, if you like, because they can see the fact that you're doing things and you're making the most out of your your nutrition, your exercise, looking after yourself as well as I was going to say put the kids first then, but it's almost like putting you both on an even scale, isn't it? So you got to look after you, otherwise you can't look after Ada and Noah and you know, the rest of the family.
Yeah, I think as well, with this being my second pregnancy, and I had a lot more knowledge this time round. When I had Noah, I didn't know all of the pre and postnatal stuff that I do. I hadn't qualified in that yet. So I was really just kind of winging it. Whereas this time round, it's been really nice to go through the pregnancy and focus on looking after myself a bit better and not listening to everyone who said, oh, you know, you've got to stop playing netball, don't go running anymore, don't do this, don't do that. It was really good, and it was quite empowering actually to work out the whole way through my pregnancy, when I got past the sickness, because that was not nice. And yeah, to use nutrition to benefit me, and then the recovery afterwards. Yeah, you know, I've said that I've got a very busy life. I've got another child already and a stepchild, so life is really busy, and it's so important that I'm at the top of my game all the time and making sure that I'm looking after my nutrition really before anybody else. Yeah.
Yeah, hats off to you, EJ, definitely.
Thank
So,
you.
I mean, we all know the importance, or we should know the importance of clean, healthy diet, spread across different food groups. Obviously, we're all different, so you know, sometimes it's a little bit of let's try different things and see what works best for us, particularly if we're suffering for something at the time. But as far as eating healthily for mums to be, and new mums, what would you, how would you sort of start off that conversation or have a conversation with somebody that was looking for advice on what they ate?
So first of all, I would kind of delve into what people do already, because that's a really good starting point, and it's a lot easier to tweak things than kind of say to somebody, well, we're going to have a complete overhaul. And I think when people are pregnant, they assume, or again, society kind of says, you know, eat for two, sit and do not a great deal, and carbs, carbs, carbs. And I think now the world is slowly changing. We're all better educated. There's a bit more knowledge that we should be still aiming for all of our food groups, making sure that you're still getting plenty of minerals. Hydration is really important. But just making sure that we're not cutting out any food groups. So it's still important to make sure you're getting protein and carbohydrates and good fats in the body, um, making sure that you avoid some of the foods when you're pregnant that we should avoid. So things like raw meat, raw fish, raw egg. Um, but hydration probably is the one that people really forget about or don't focus on. And the levels of water within our bodies massively increases when we're pregnant. So that's something that you've really got to focus on. And then anyone postnatally, again, I would say it's really important to eat foods that you enjoy, but still aim for those colourful plates. And we're not eating too many more calories than you would do as a baseline if you weren't pregnant. So the guidelines suggest that we eat between 2 and 500 extra calories a day in the third trimester. That's the only time that you should be eating any more than your average person. And then when baby's here, if you're breastfeeding, we're encouraged to eat again between sort of 2 to 500 calories more a day. But that's clean calories. We're not saying, you know, go and get a bar of chocolate, or, you know, you're still going to make sure you fuel in your body in the best way possible. Um, and I think one of the important things for me this time round was I really understood that everything I eat, or everything I ate, sorry, went straight to the baby. So whatever you're eating when you are pregnant is literally processed through your stomach, and then it goes straight to the baby. And I think that made me feel a lot more mindful about what I was eating, the quantities of things I was eating, and just kind of making better choices, I would say.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And I think, you know, just to to come to the calories that you mentioned, the extra calories at those two critical times, with some of the processed and ultra processed food, that's not actually a lot, is it? You know, you say a bar of chocolate, Dunkin' Donuts, something like that, a pizza.
Yeah.
But if that's clean calories, as you say, that's a nice
Um,
helping of fruit or veg. You know, you could have a really, you know, you could always have an extra meal with that, couldn't you? But it's the good stuff that then you, as you say, you process it and it's going through you and it's straight to the baby. So, you know, what people don't want to be doing is drinking copious cups of coffee, you know, caffeine, that kind of thing, products with E numbers and that sort of thing, because that's just going straight to the baby, which is not giving it a healthy start.
yeah.
So, yeah, really good advice. Thank you.
Thank you. It's interesting as well, just on caffeine. I think we don't realize how many foods and drinks are in, sorry, how much caffeine is in different foods and drinks. So we just assume that it's tea and coffee, but there's a lot of caffeine in chocolate, and things that you perhaps wouldn't think of. So it's really important to make sure you're not overdoing the caffeine, especially when you are pregnant. Yeah.
Yeah, probably even things like, I mean, I don't know if this is true or not. It's just popped into my head as you were talking then, but maybe even things like protein bars or, energy drinks, that sort of thing, things that are marketed to us to help to replenish energy levels as such, which, mums to be, people that have just had a baby, sleep starved, are going to want more energy. And, to resort to that kind of thing is potentially not the way that we should go.
Absolutely, yeah. And there is a lot of pressure to jump straight up as a new mum and bounce back, and this bounce, oh, I hate it so much, the culture of bouncing back after having a child. Actually just focusing on the fundamentals, eating your fruit and veg, making sure you hit your food groups, protein at every meal if you can, or if you can stomach it, and plenty of water.
Yeah,
If you can stick by those, you won't go far wrong.
yeah, the simple stuff, the natural stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
and food in its most raw form, and obviously we're going to come on to talk about this, but um, cooking for enjoyment, but eating food in its rawest form, trying to avoid as much as you can that's processed, and low and slow is best.
yeah, low and slow. Well, let's talk a little bit about that before we move on to talking about what kinds of food that women going through the menopause and perimenopause. So yeah, I love raw food. I love carrots. I like anything that's al dente cooked. And I think we've talked about this before in the past, things such as stir fries where you cook them on a very, very high heat. Other traditional forms of cooking where we put vegetables, we think we're doing well because we're cooking vegetables with a Sunday roast, for example, but we boil them to near death. So what are your recommendations around choosing the best foods that are raw, but then also there are some foods, aren't there, which actually change through that cooking process, and more nutrients come out from the cooking process rather than in their rawest form. So could you just share a little bit about some of those and perhaps give some recommendations?
Of course, yeah. So I'll go with reducing nutrients first. So some forms of cooking can actually reduce the amount of nutrients which are in our food. So nutrients such as vitamin C, and some B vitamins, and minerals like potassium and calcium can all be reduced by as much as 60 to 70% in our foods when we cook, and
Wow.
also iron and zinc. So these are all things that you've probably seen supplements on the shelves for before and thought, oh, I wonder why I might need to take those as an additional supplement around my food. Well, actually, the way that we're cooking things, if we are blitzing food or cooking it really quickly on a really high heat, you're almost kind of killing off the nutrients within the food, which is why low and slow is kind of recommended as the best way to go. So when you're stir frying foods, um, we like the idea that stir fry is quick and easy. But the reason it should be quick is not because of the high heat, but because we're not overcooking it. You're kind of you're cooking it to the point where it is still a bit al dente, like you said. So a stir fry should have that bit of crunch, even though it's been cooked quite quickly. So we're not completely obliterating the food. And another thing to add is that we're not putting in too much oil or fat or butter to cook the foods with as well.
Yeah,
Ada
and
agrees.
she does. She says, yes, that's correct.
But other nutrients, such as something called lycopene, which is in tomatoes, and beta carotene, which is in carrots, are actually more readily available to our bodies when they're cooked. So you'll hear that, a raw carrot has got less beta carotene in than a carrot when it's been cooked. And that's because the cooking process actually changes the chemical makeup of the food.
Interesting. And that, would you say that was the same? So thinking about carrots, because I quite like carrots that are just cooked in a tiny little bit of water, chopped up as round carrots, or chopping them up in sort of the longer form and putting them in a stir fry so that they're a lot thinner. But also oven cooking them as well. So sort of roasted vegetables, roasted carrots.
Yeah.
Now I can imagine that the roasted version probably isn't the best version because you've got the oil coating on there as well. But do all of those processes, increase that level of beta carotene? Was it beta
Yeah.
carotene, did you say?
Yeah. Well
Yes.
done. So the more cooked they are, I guess, so the mushier they are, the closer to being baby food, basically,
Right.
the higher the levels are. So if you're keeping it as close to al dente, that's where the levels are lowest. Does that make
Ah,
sense?
it does make sense. Yes, I'm just thinking, but not necessarily to use a potato masher to mash them up. It's more with butter. It's more of the cooking process.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it is. So if you're like boiling things to the point where they just completely disintegrate, yeah, that's kind of what I meant.
Yeah, and then just on that subject, because sometimes, particularly with, I would say probably broccoli, maybe peas or sweet corn. I mean, peas are great for protein, aren't they?
Yeah,
Boiling those, I try not to use a huge amount of water, but you can see anything that's kind of having I suppose, the nutrients leached from it because the water changes colour. But I
yeah.
then would quite often make a gravy with that, using that water rather than just using hot water. So am I right in thinking that we were still retaining some of that goodness if we use the water element
Yes.
elsewhere?
Yeah, you would, because
Yeah.
whatever's in the food, as long as it stays in the pan, is obviously just, yeah, going into the water. So diffusing, is that the right word? Possibly not,
Uh,
but I know what I
yeah, not
mean.
sure, but I know what you mean.
um, it's not diffusing, but because that's obviously gas. Anyway, so yeah, it's releasing into the water, and then if you're reusing that water for something like a gravy or a sauce or some kind of stock, then yeah, you're retaining the goodness as much as you can.
Yeah. And I suppose the other thing as well is the utensils that you cook things in, because sometimes we've got different gradients of stainless steel. Titanium is supposed to be one of the best because it cooks quicker, it holds in the heat better. But then you've also got pans and various things which are coated in different plastics than that, to
Yeah.
be frank, aren't they? So it is
Yeah.
important to be mindful of the cooking utensils being used as well.
Yeah, and all the saucepans out there that claim they're non-stick, there's some kind of coating on that which makes the food not stick. So as much as it's great in the sense that you don't necessarily have to use a lot of oil or any oil, just be really, read reviews and make sure you really understand exactly what you're purchasing. When I was at university, far too long ago now, our nutrition specialist, she would always talk to us about using copper pots and pans just to cook your vegetables in.
Mm,
I don't think that's what they advise anymore, because the idea was the same, in that the copper pan, all of the nutrients from the copper would be released back into what you were cooking. Because I think perhaps at the time we were maybe a little bit deficient in
mm,
copper. So it's really important to keep an eye on the trends, but not jump on the next quick fix. I think that's my message there is,
yeah.
go with something that's trusted, look at reviews, um, and kind of, yeah, taste test things for yourself. But when it comes to things like oil, um, again, less is more.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, definitely. Or even without, I think we've had this conversation before, haven't we, of cooking certain things which have got an element of water in them already, like courgettes and carrots and, a lot of Chinese food as well, bean sprouts, water chestnuts, that sort of thing. They've all got a level of water in. And ask the question, do you really need to put oil in or butter or whatever your chosen thing is? I don't know whether Ada's agreeing with me there or not.
So just the last 2 days, she's all of a sudden really chatty when she's awake. So I do apologise to anyone trying to get a peaceful listen here. Um, yeah, so foods in their rawest form contain a lot of moisture. So again, when we're cooking things, it's important to retain that moisture rather than add extra oil or cooking fats, because they will naturally cook down themselves, which is again why we kind of want to do it slowly. So you're giving foods the opportunity to release that goodness into the pan, and then the flavors mix with one another. And then you end up with a really nice, tasty meal. Obviously, you know, a professional chef would beg to differ when it comes to what you could use, because if we were to say use the same pan and cook your steak in that, any of the fat that kind of renders off, you would then recover the steak in so that you're retaining the goodness in the steak, and then you would perhaps chuck your asparagus in after that, so the fat's being reused. Sorry.
All right. Yeah, and I think as well, there is, I can't remember whether this is a thing anymore or whether it's just certain kinds of pans, again, certain types of cooking utensils. But I know I had something, I don't know if it's cast iron, where you're not actually supposed to wash them, or certainly not use washing up liquid or anything like that. Put them in the dishwasher, but just get a little bit of kitchen towel or something and wipe through, and the oils and the residue of what's been left helps to soak into the utensil so that it's reused with whatever else is added to it on the next
Yeah,
cooking
into
process.
the next meal and the next meal
Mm,
and the next meal. Yeah.
yeah, and I'm guessing is it paella, perhaps, you know, the sort of Mediterranean Spanish cooking is the same, possibly. So yeah, it's very interesting though. I have a quick question about cooking with oils and fats and butters and things like that, if it's something, because people do like the taste of that quite often. So is there one that we can use that gives us a bit of a balance, so we've got some taste there but it's not the worst thing that we can use?
Yeah, so I would always lean towards like an olive oil, or I eat a lot of plant-based. So we have plant-based butter. So I tend to use that in my cooking, because I just like the taste a bit more. And I find sometimes with oils, it can give your food a really strange kind of coating, which is, it doesn't leave a particularly nice taste in the mouth. So I've experimented with a few different things. I've tried coconut oil, and again, just didn't really like the tinge that it gave to my food. Um, we talked before, I think, about roast potatoes.
Yeah.
Now, cooking roast potatoes without any kind of oil feels like a massive compromise. But again, I've tried potatoes with like a cooking oil, so an extra virgin olive oil, as opposed to say lard or goose fat or beef dripping or whatever they used to use in the old days. Um, and I find that the taste is a lot crispier and lighter. So I think it's kind of choosing healthier options, pardon you, but without the compromise of taste and texture, because that's a
Yeah.
lot of why people enjoy their food. You know, people say they're foodies, and it's the process of how the food feels in the mouth and the mastication of the food. That's why we like foods, or we're kind of drawn more to foods that are like crisps and nuts, or something that's crunchy, because it feels nice to the palate.
Mm. Yeah, and it ignites more of our senses as well, because we can hear the crunch, we
Yeah,
can taste the flavor in our mouth, but we can also sense the action of the crunch, you know, how it's breaking up in our
yeah,
mouth.
yeah,
And again, you mentioned that, and I'm thinking raw carrots, apples, you know, anything, even al dente broccoli or tender stems, you
yeah,
know, that have that kind of crunch. And also I quite like making salads and having cashew nuts on there, which also crunch nicely in the mouth. So there's lots of healthy alternatives, isn't there? We don't have to
yeah,
reach for snacks such as you know, crisps. We can go for the root vegetable versions, which are cooked a lot healthier. There's also more variety of vegetables within the crisp, rather than it just being a white potato. I
yeah,
think that's something that I try to do, is not necessarily use white potatoes all the time, but replace that for sweet potatoes, even beans, different types of beans as well, and mix that up a little bit with other vegetables, rather than just having the starchy white traditional potato, which we all do love. And
yeah,
we're talking about how to get the perfect roast potato. I always try and um, shake mine in a little bit of flour first,
yeah.
because I don't, you know, you say about the texture, that just seems to give it a little bit more. I don't know what it is, the skin there's something happens to the skin when I add the flour, a little bit of lemon juice as well, that just adds some more flavour.
Lemon juice. I like the sound of that. I'm going to be trying those on Sunday.
Oh, I've had my lunch already, but I am feeling very hungry now. So it's you shouldn't raid the cupboard when you're feeling peckish, should you? I shall wait.
No.
So shall we move on, EJ, to talk about women who are going through perimenopause, menopause, perhaps a little bit about what sort of foods were beneficial to people, you know, what we perhaps become a little bit more deficient of because of the changes that the body's going through chemically, and any kind of hints and tips that you've got there for us to eat clean. I'm saying us because I think you know, I've got symptoms certainly of perimenopause at the moment, and yeah, I can tell when I've eaten something that doesn't agree with me, and it certainly wasn't foods. That sort of thing didn't happen to me 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you want to just pass on your advice there, that would be most appreciated.
Of course, yeah. So we're going to come first to hot and cold flushes. Now, hot flushes is probably one of the main symptoms that women experience, or they'll talk a lot about hot and cold flushes. And very often, hot flushes can come around or just after you've had a meal. And what's going on basically is you've had a big meal, your stomach welcomes the food, and then your body goes, oh, I'm really struggling to break this food down. So what happens is our body temperature skyrockets because our body's having to work really hard to break down the food. So again, if you can avoid processed food because your body has to work twice, if not three times harder to break that down in the stomach, it's really, really difficult for your stomach to absorb any goodness from that food whatsoever. That will really help. But also kind of resorting back to a little and often approach with food as opposed to 3 big meals a day. A lot of women find that that is a much nicer way for not only their gut to cope, but also to reduce those symptoms of hot flushes. So eating smaller meals, little and often, thinking about the kind of snacks that you're going to eat. So focusing on a high fat, low carbohydrate diet. Notice I say low, not no carbs, because we still need to be eating all of the food groups. But when it comes to carbohydrates, I think people forget that fruit and vegetables count as carbohydrates. When it comes to those carbs where we're looking at rice, pasta, try and head for whole wheat or whole grain or brown options as opposed to the white option, because again, that just sits a bit nicer on the stomach. It's not as difficult to digest and it will fill you up for longer. When I talk about high fat, I think women in particular really struggle with the concept of high fat because society tells us that we should be on low fat everything and fat is bad for us. So it's just a little bit of re-education around, you know, fats, good fats and healthy fats or naturally occurring fats are fine for us. So fats that we can find in avocado or nuts or, you know, beans and lentils or high fat or sorry, full fat yogurt, proper Greek or natural yogurt, as opposed to going for that low fat alternative. Again, that's going to fill you up for much longer, and your body will cope a lot better with that. So those are really good fats to add to the diet. And trying to avoid really spicy foods because again our palate can really change. So you might find that, you know, you used to really enjoy eating hot spicy food, or you used to have more of like a sweet tooth, and now actually your taste buds have completely changed and you prefer more savory foods, or you would prefer to go for a mild curry as opposed to a vindaloo.
Yeah, it's interesting you should say that because I used to, when I was younger, every couple of months, I'd with my parents, we'd go to a curry house and we'd have a curry, and I was all for trying different flavors, and I could have the spice. Well, I don't know, maybe I was early teens or tweens when I was able to have a spicy one, but the more now with age, I can't eat spicy stuff anymore. It's not that, well, I shouldn't say can't, I can still eat it, but I don't, it's just hot to me now. It's not flavoursome as such anymore. So there's, I can definitely notice a difference in how I'm tasting and enjoying the spicy foods. And as for, eating little but more often, again, that's something that I've really noticed that I can't eat, particularly in the evening with the main meal. I'd struggle to eat the same portion that I used to use without feeling as though I am full, that I couldn't, there's nothing else could go down, even a drink of water. So to try and eat little more often is a great tip for me, and something that, I mean, I've always said that I've got a high metabolism, because I usually am hungry within about 3 hours of having food, regardless as to how much I've had. But I think, that's even less as I'm getting older now. But also, I suppose, to eat little and more often, we're not having those same sort of, I'm guessing anyway, sort of spikes in blood sugar levels and that as well. Would I be right in thinking that we're maintaining a little bit more balance with everything inside us?
Yeah, so your blood sugar levels will kind of maintain or plateau, as opposed to getting those peaks and troughs. And when we talk about troughs, that's when you feel really hungry, you get the hunger pangs, and you just want to reach for something sugary, which is normally a chocolate bar or a bag of crisps or something that isn't going to do you any good. So yeah, if you can maintain good levels of glucose in the body, it stops you then having those peaks and troughs. The extreme peaks as well might, cause headaches or kind of brain fogginess, which again is a huge side effect of perimenopause. So anything you can do to reduce that as a symptom, again, would be really helpful. It's important to note that it is all just around the hormone imbalance in the body. But if you are struggling with it, then don't struggle in silence. It's always really good to connect with people on, menopause forums, speak to your GP, although they're not always particularly helpful. But yes, hopefully some of these nutrition tips will really help.
Yeah.
And again, trying to remain as hydrated as possible. Hydration is key, says Ada. And avoiding alcohol as much as you can, because alcohol is a toxin in the body, the same as, a lot of sugar or a lot of salt. So, kind of plain foods in their rawest form, little and often, and plenty of water.
Yeah, I notice very quickly if I'm not hydrated enough these days. So I've always got my bottle with me, and I think today this is a 750 ml bottle. I think I've filled it up twice today. So I think I'm doing okay so far. Still got half of the day left, which is good. Um,
Fantastic.
yeah, thank you. But yeah, just being mindful of things. And I've never been one who's had too much of a sweet tooth. Although the question that popped into my head that I thought I'd just run by you to see if you had any ideas is I enjoyed a rhubarb and apple crumble at the
Mm-hmm.
weekend. Now, I quite like those traditional sort of puddings, the sort of sticky toffee pudding, the crumbles, that kind of thing, which probably doesn't have as much added to it as some of the, cakes and things that we can buy these days. But I really enjoyed the crumble, and I didn't feel as though I was that full after it, even though I think I'd had coconut and satay chicken skewers with some salad before, so it wasn't over heavy on the carbs or anything. So yeah, and I wonder, based on what you were saying then, it wasn't so much sweet, but the rhubarb's very tarty or sour, and whether that be something that would be more enjoyable to my palate, should we say, at the perimenopause menopausal age, or not. Maybe I'm just talking rubbish.
I mean, it depends on the individual, but I think taste buds definitely change, and what we enjoy or what we find enjoyable to eat changes. So experiment a little bit for yourself. But yeah, that kind of tart is, it's not quite sweet. It's kind of a mix of sweet and sour.
Yeah.
And I think everybody likes, we've all got a bit of a soft spot for that kind of tangy, sweet, but not sweetly, like sickly sweet, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, I always wake up and my first drink in the morning is 2 slices of fresh lemon in hot water. And I've really enjoyed, I miss that so much if I don't have it now, because I think it sort of cleanses my system first, and then, just gets me ready for whatever I'm going to eat for breakfast, which tends to be a bagel with avocado, eggs, and a slice of ham. So I feel as though I'm doing okay with that one, and the start to the day.
Yeah.
But yeah, the lemon, and it's interesting that Greta's has she had, what is the name of it now? She's had this water bottle. I don't know if you know what they are. It's all the rage at the moment. It's this water bottle that you've put something in the top of it, and when you drink the water, whatever this thing is at the top releases a smell. So it's as though, for example, she put in a lime, you're drinking like a lemon and lime sort of water. It's not water, it's the sense of smell that makes you think that you're drinking the flavored water. But I could hardly taste the flavor in it, because I've been drinking my lemon tea, which I think is just much more of a pungent taste, I suppose.
Yeah.
It was much stronger than whatever it was that was within this bottle. But I suppose it's great for kids because it encourages them to drink more water.
That's really interesting, and I'm so out of touch. I've never heard of this. I thought you were gonna say you can buy water bottles that have like a diffuser in the top, so you can put fruit like strawberries, lemon, lime in the top, and then as you drink the water, it tastes, so it's flavored water but
Yeah.
homemade, I guess. But yeah, I know a lot of schools, in fact, all schools only allow children to drink water. So maybe this is the next gimmick to kind of get around kids feeling like they're just drinking water. I don't know.
Yeah, they
Really
weren't.
interesting.
Yeah, they weren't cheap. I'll see if I can find what it is called, and then just make a note of it in the show notes. But yeah, as for whether she drinks more water, I don't know. But quite innovative from the makers, I would say. But it's a shame that we have to go to these sorts of resources just to get. I'm not just for kids, because these bottles could be for anybody. But to encourage us to drink more water, we should just realise that we need a certain amount of water every day, and just get on and drink it.
It's like that meme that I've seen really recently where when you're younger you think that a grown-up drink is alcohol, and then you get to like your mid-30s and actually realize that the grown-up drink is water. Just,
Yeah.
get your water in.
Yeah, sorry, milk as a baby, and then just water from there on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, is there anything else, EJ, that you think, mums to be, older ladies going through the change, that we should know? Any kind of last hints and tips you'd like to share?
One thing I'm a huge advocate for is batch cooking.
Mhm.
Um, just because I know how super busy mums and women who are like at the height of their career trying to go through menopause as well are. So if you can, it will save you time, it will save you effort, it will save you a lot of money as well, actually, if you can batch cook things. So pick a meal that you really enjoy, cook it low and slow, cook loads of it, and then just dish it out into little containers and freeze it, or keep it in the fridge for each day. um, and just planning ahead. And then the last thing really is being a bit more playful with food, which I think we've kind of touched on before. Um, I eat food because I know that I need to, and it's very much just I'll eat whatever's there, and I make sure I hit my food groups, and that's fine. But it's so nice to be experimental with food. So if you do want to try, a bit of rhubarb and apple, or some different taste combinations, don't be afraid to try.
Yeah, just experiment. Yeah, I'm doing a lot more of that these days. And some of those foods that I didn't like to eat through childhood, like mushrooms and green beans, that which kind of up until about the last 6 months, I still wouldn't really eat. And now I'm just thinking, it's food. Just get it down you. It's not gonna hurt you. So I am willing to pretty much try anything these days. And if I try something new and I absolutely love it, then great. If I don't love it, then it's still an additional nutrient, that's coming into my body that I wouldn't have normally had. So yeah, wonderful tips. Thank you very much. And Rachel actually was on the podcast last week. She was an advocate for, she didn't say batch cooking as such, But she said just cook a little bit more for the meal that you have, and then that provides you for your lunch the next day. Because quite often it's the lunch, I think, that we struggle with sometimes, that, we tend to reach more for the convenience food, or we realize we've got nothing in. So we'll call in a drive-through, or a fatty bakery of some description, and pick up some lunch. So yeah, just having something that's freshly cooked, single ingredients the night before, to carry over onto your lunch. And I did a load of batch cooking when we had the kitchen done, which saved me an awful lot of time, and we were just able to pull different meals out. Unfortunately, stick them in the microwave. I don't like microwave cooking, but we hadn't got a cooker at the time. But it did save a lot of time, and it allowed me to still eat a healthy meal, rather than picking something that's full of things that shouldn't be in there and we don't know how to pronounce on the back of a label.
I was going to say as well, it saved you just getting takeaways.
Yeah.
Microwaving isn't fantastic. It's a lot better than a takeaway.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. A lot cheaper as well. You get your payback from buying a microwave a lot quicker than you will having a takeaway every night. Yeah, brilliant. So one last question before we wrap up, EJ. Is there anything, obviously people can keep food diaries and that sort of thing to try and link what they eat with how they feel and their moods and that sort of thing. But would you happen to have any kind of thoughts or questions or prompts for people that they might be able to? I'm a big advocate of journaling and writing for your own well-being. So from a nutrition point of view, do you have anything that you think people could consider, or just think about, maybe have at the back of their mind, that they could determine the right food for them, for example? So did that make sense? I didn't feel as though I asked that question very well.
I think I'll go with my interpretation of that question.
Okay, thank you.
And for me, it is just focusing on hitting your food groups at each meal. Protein at breakfast, especially, people I think struggle with that, but that's really easy to do through eggs, or steak, or just something that you really enjoy.
Did you say steak then?
Steak, yeah. When I
Steak for
used to eat meat,
breakfast?
I used to have steak and egg salad for breakfast. Yeah,
Wow.
a lot of mornings, because again, it was something that I could prep the night before, and just something to get down me. But I find as well, if you are the kind of person who enjoys kind of keeping a record or tracking what you're eating, apps like MyFitnessPal are fantastic, because you can kind of measure out all your food and it will tell you what's in it as well. And I find it's not only a good way of tracking, but it's quite educational, because it tells you, how much salt, how much of all of the different nutrients are in that food as well. So yeah, I think if you want to focus a little bit more on your nutrition, do the easy things, get your fruit and vegetables in, hit your water intake each day, and use a tracker, or just keep some kind of food diary and kind of review it, or keep a track of how you felt after different foods. So if you're worried that you might perhaps have an intolerance, or you are a bit, something's not quite agreeing with you like it used to, just keep a little note of how you feel after you've eaten certain things, and try and eliminate that from your diet, because if it doesn't make you feel good, it's not going to help you feel good overall.
Yeah. Nobody likes to feel sluggish, or as though they've had something that gives them a bit of an upset stomach. So
No.
yeah, brilliant advice there. Thanks, EJ. I've thoroughly enjoyed talking to you today. Thank you very much for sharing your time. And Ada, to you as well. Thank you very much for being here and joining us and giving us your what am I trying to say here? See, this is perimenopause. It's just the words just disappear from your mind as you're trying to speak.
Being quiet, aren't you now? Now that we're going to wrap up, you've got nothing to say.
Yeah. I
Thank
was
you
going to
so
say
much for
thanks for the
having
input.
us.
Oh, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. I always learn a lot when I talk to you, EJ. So yeah, it's been wonderful to have you. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening to today's Writing with Purpose podcast. Having conversations with fellow writers or adventure enthusiasts brings two of my biggest loves in life together: writing and nature connection. I've been a copywriter and content creator for 23 years, but my passion is writing for well-being, and I'm on a mission to share the benefits that putting pen to paper has for personal wellness with as many people as possible. If you want to learn more about writing for your well-being and journaling techniques, please connect with me in my Facebook group, Journaling with Anna.